So these are some questions related to parliamentary and presidential form of government, and that will also give you macro understanding about Indian democracy and how it is different from presidential form and how it has fared so far and whether we need to change. If you need to change, should we take means reform democracy itself, or we should switch to presidential form of government. Time to time, at times you can find that articles are written in newspapers, so after knowing this, thereafter those articles will become meaningless for you. So anyhow, uh, it is equally relevant for GS paper. We have been expecting a question from this perspective in GS paper second. And these are various aspects. So that day we wrote about what we say parliamentary and presidential form. This will also give you macro understanding about democracy, especially parliamentary form, which generally people lack in terms of macro understanding of the topic. And means it will bring you to the aspects of what democracy is, especially what we have adopted. Before that, it is coming in my mind, so I may forget towards end of the class. So happy new year to all, and best
Thank you,
wishes.
sir.
Happy New Year, sir.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
That may God help you, and since this year is going to be for you appearing in prelims men's interview, so a promising year coming ahead. So may you tackle well, go through ups and downs, come out successfully.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we told about parliamentary form. So we should know basically these characteristics have been derived on the basis of practices of different types of democracy. And when it has been analyzed that okay, how many categories, how many types of democracy we have. Democracy in one sense is called that it is elected, it means elected by people, a government which is elected by people. But then it can be, the elections can happen in different way. There can be some other manifestations and characteristics. On the basis of that, this is how it has been analyzed. So we told that there are largely three types of democracy. One, that parliamentary, presidential, second, and third is called mixed type, which is of less relevant. Largely we take presidential versus parliamentary. So our parliamentary versus presidential. And when we say origin of that, so parliamentary democracy evolved on British land, and this called presidential evolved on UK land. So one question will also be related to this comparison between Indian parliamentary democracy and UK. That also. Already questions have been asked in GS also, in public administration also. At times they have asked the three comparisons India, US and UK. not necessarily related to this, as we told about Westminster model of democracy and political culture. They are at odds with that a question which was asked. वैसे ही लोग political culture समझते नहीं हैं and question, so you know that कि pose difficulty in culture of writing answer. So parliamentary form, when we say it's, we told that its most important aspect is feature is called dual heads. One, like say in UK and in India, so dual heads, it can be, let's say, president as formal, PM as real, which we say as de jure, and this can be in UK as crown, means the queen, the king. So then it becomes monarchical. It is a monarchical democratic. Ours is republic democratic. When heads of the state is elected. So when there is a dual head, so it creates checks and balances. So when we'll take executive, there we'll talk it. So dual heads, so they will create checks and balances, like president becomes the conscience keeper of prime minister, this way. So means there is something that which can exercise check, or PM is made responsible to president. So that way, let's say one person, unity of command will not be there, rather duality of command in place of presidential. When we say, so it is duality of command. And presidential. So when we say unity of command, so there is unity of command. These parameters will also compare whether Indian democracy has been really parliamentary or it has switched back to presidential kind of characteristics. So then we will say collective responsibility, or let's say we told executive, the real executive, that is PM or Council of Ministers headed by PM, belongs to legislature, means parliament. So this has complete separation. Of powers. Then we told collective responsibility, collective as well as individual responsibility. This to parliament. Right, no such provision. Although the Congress can remove president, Means complete but checks and balances, so to say. Then you should know that. Okay. Then what features can be? What other features can be? Party system. That is, people vote to party or party means party symbol rather than candidate. People vote to president and hence directly elected. Hence PM is indirectly elected. This PM first among equal. President more than equal. He dominates. In decision making. Cabinet, right, as decision making body. So cabinet is decision making body. So that we told that day. I guess today, since I want to explain a bit on that. So now basically these features are more related to one person. Sorry. One leader, personality based. Democracy, government. Government. This is party. Party based. So party dominates. Not person. So that's why it is collective. This so advantage of one will be disadvantage of another. No. The advantages if you take. So let's take that. Advantages. Additional. So, responsible, collective decision, collective decision. तो जो सोचा था फ्रेमर्स ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में वो हुआ नहीं, कुछ और हो गया। और वो बहुत ही सीरियस है। So they thought that there will be multi layers of responsibility, which we'll talk separately. So there will be multi layers of responsibility. They will be responsible people, and that's why they adopted. And it will be more representative to society, suitable for diverse aspect. But we'll talk how it has worked. It's more that time it was prone to unstable government, means there will be instability, instability, coalition politics, hence bargaining, populist politics. You can see collective responsibility means headless government. It is difficult to fix responsibility. That has been, we can say, most important weakness, but just to be defensive, moderate, among the most important weakness. Prone to all sort of things. सब कुछ जो बच्चे करते हैं घर में, सब कुछ, all these things they can do at bigger level. मतलब बच्चे छोटे छोटे टैंट्रम शो करते हैं, बट ये बड़े बड़े टैंट्रम शो करते हैं. So that is how you'll find that it has its own disadvantages. Now if you take presidential forms, it will not have all these things, but then this is how it is. If you talk presidential form of,
Sir,
yes,
son of soil factor can be a disadvantage in this.
Yes, this parochial will take care of. So culture, when it has been written, so it will take care of. When we write parochial subject culture, so they are very inclusive, broad. They can include all these things. But still, to make things more clear, we have written it. So, if you write on this presidential form, so advantage. So, stable government, this strong leadership, then bold reforms, decisions, merit-based decision making. So basically it will be more of leader based. So it will have characteristics of all those leaders' advantages. It depends on the leaders if they are highly visionary and like the leadership characteristics we have talked, charismatic, transformational. So they will be bringing bold reforms because there is no any question of getting support withdrawn or consensus building. So that consensus building not needed. Bold reforms, speedy reforms, you can say. So bold, you can also write speedy. The speedy reforms, decision making, more merit-based decision making rather than populist. Let's say यूपी का इलेक्शन आया है तो सारा programs, schemes, projects, everything will be now heading towards Uttar Pradesh. this, don't feel bad, but anyhow, this is what I have my way of telling all these things. So now मेरठ याद आया है, फिर ध्यानचंद जी याद आ गए हैं, this, उसके बाद फिर ध्यानचंद जी कब याद आएंगे पता नहीं. Anyhow, so that is populism, like say कि now union can pour all the resources to the states because it has to win elections. This, and so things are planned in such a way that ki elections, like say election after election, populism, you'll know that. Here the government, you'll have that the government has, although yes, people will be happy कि चलो कैसे भी तो आ रहा है ना पैसा. This is how the, ours is a society where by hooks and crooks भी तो आना चाहिए ना, साम दाम दंड भेद जो फिलॉसफी है कौटिल्य जी ने दे दिया था एक बार, दूसरे कौटिल्य फॉलो कर रहे हैं. So this will find that. So, but then there is, the government is elected for 5 years. Now it has to work this. So it may not work also because there is this was, we can say that ki there is no check, means that kind of you can say checks and balances we do not have. So there are checks and balances lacking. So that we can find. But yes, these are the advantage. But the disadvantage will be like this. This is what we can say this. So responsible. So try to understand this, that it was thought कि presidential form of government, most important its concern was the first point, that if presidential form is adopted and what if leader is, right? So leader is like what we have North Korean leader, so that leader is like Hitler. So it was thought that if the person is authoritarian type, like so the way we have the presidents like China, China, Russia. So China, Russia, and Turkey, they have themselves declared as lifelong president of their country. Even after death also they will be president. So they have declared, so that is how excess of a leader, that the concern was that it shivers like say thinking ki, if the leader is authoritarian then what will happen. So that was the main aspect, that not adopting, or why we went, although we'll talk, it will have a centralizing tendency because one person is the leader, less representative because now it depends on that person, and the person is one man army type of, it is the government, and then society which is not like this and that, so it will not be representative of that. And then policy also will be narrow because it depends on one person thinking, whatever he thinks he will do that. You can say how Trumpism was there for 5 years. So there will be no course correction also. So if Trump wanted his American first way of, let's say, and always let's say that कि working something, कुछ भी रात को जो भी सपने में आ गया सुबह आकर के decision ले लिया. So that kind प्रेसिडेंट, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया इज रिक्वेस्टिंग कि मत बोलो कश्मीर पे, बोलता है कि हाँ ठीक है नहीं बोलूँगा, फिर कल आता है फिर से कश्मीर पे. So as if he does not know what he spoke yesterday. So if you have president like that, right? So this is what it is like, but yes, it has stable, strong as we are talking. Let me tell that ki representative means ki since MPs, MLA will be all that elected, so they can belong to different sections of society. They are elected, and then the philosophy is that when PM should decide his portfolio with Council of Ministers, he should take care of the representatives of different sections of society. Ideally, we'll talk when we'll take executive. Ideally, Council of Ministers should be reflection of society. That is how he has to take care of. Ideally, let's say the way society has different types of compositions in terms of our religion, community, etc. So ideally, that way it should have reflection. So that way it is in the hand of the Prime Minister. Like say one person from Northeast has been now made minister. Largely the Northern India dominated and Southern India ignored. So that also still remains. So that kind of regional imbalance also can be found in Council of Ministers. Religion wise it has not been representative. You can see how it is. So that has been also ideals if not followed. So for what representativeness? There are other things which we'll talk in working. So the question is, let's say that what exactly has happened? Why India went for choosing that responsible government over this presidential form? First it would not suit, but that was not the most important aspect. B.R. Ambedkar stated very vociferously that assertively that we are opting for a responsible government even at the cost of unstable government. Why? Because the government should be responsible to people. That is more important than even stability. And what does it mean when we say responsible government? This. So that also we have to understand. So basically, let's say, although we tell that, we know that you should not write, but basically when we ask questions, people start writing that all those, let's say that, what you can, Lakshmikant type of content, which has no any dynamism in the content. So that's also good content, but it's more static. Right. You have to relate. We are talking in public administration, so we can talk leadership characteristics. We can mention Barnard also. We have freedom to mention this. So that is called orientation. That you orient this anyhow. So the question is that now we have to say that whether how we can evaluate responsible government. But B.R. Ambedkar wanted that there should be responsible government, and we should have responsible government over even at the cost of if government is unstable. So presidential system was rejected. It does not also suit because of other let's say that aspects, because we need representation. So representativeness is needed. That was another disadvantage, centralizing tendency it has, which we'll talk after some time. The analysis should happen on whether the advantages have been, whether we have been able to realize the advantages. If we are able to realize the advantages, we can say yes, responsible government has worked. So have we realized? This, and that should be analyzed in this context. Means this side, disadvantage, whether it has threatened. Means how it has worked. Means no doubt it will have these things. But whether it is disadvantages that we feared, so whether the fear of presidential form of government, so those fears have really been true. And whether the responsible government has worked, so whether it has delivered the advantages. That comparison. So we find that the fears were unfounded. Right. The fears were unfounded. And we find it has not delivered on that responsible aspect. Rather, what it has happened, it has also experienced emergency. Parliamentary democracy has also experienced emergency. We have experienced once emergency. We have seen the excesses of even a democratic leader who has complete majority in the Lok Sabha. So that is what we can find. Now, another important aspect is that it will perform. But if a government which is responsible does not perform, so what hum performance ke what responsibility ke kya karenge? The way we told that कि if a socialist society is not resourceful, तो हम socialism का क्या करेंगे? What will do of socialism, right? So similarly, if government has not been responsible, so what we will do of the form of democracy? It does not matter कि whether cat is black or white, or what we can say, mice is, or mouse, what we say. So the question is that form of democracy, what we will do of form of democracy? Then meanwhile there are some other developments. The other developments which we'll talk that, especially RTI, hzJLM Charter, good governance, they have made the democratic tools which we have introduced 80s onwards, they have made this government responsible. The tools of good governance and etc. They have made this government, even if it is presidential, but it has been made responsible. But the tools have been introduced, it was its feature, but then tools also not effectively implemented. So barring, let's say that some democracy which cannot be ideal, because our comparison is never Russia and Turkey and China, means we cannot compare democracy because the ideals are US and UK rather than, let's say, Russia and China. So because origin happened over there, so on the basis of that, let's say the analysis should be there, whether it has been really responsible. If it has not been really responsible, should we adopt it? We should not adopt it. What was the concept of responsible government, and why we went for adopting parliamentary form of democracy, not presidential form of democracy? And any person who has very vociferously argued for presidential form of democracy is Shashi Tharoor. So he has been writing since 90s, and if it had been presidential form of government, he could have also got a chance. Right. Many a time parliamentary democracy would not give a chance to good people to come in politics. Presidential form of democracy can give good people chance to come in politics because it depends on the person, that personality characteristics. If the person has personality characteristic, the person can be elected as mayor also, as pradhan also, as chief minister also, and as prime minister also. But in party system, first person has to spend time with party, give money to party, and then he can get ticket for once. Second time it depends whether he again gives money to party or not. So this kind of so it has lots of, also we'll talk what responsible government is, other things, but let's write on this further. Right. The factors or reasons for adopting parliamentary form of government. India went for adopting parliamentary form of government, which is also considered as responsible government. Responsible government or Westminster model of government. Westminster model of government because of following factors. First, according to B.R. Ambedkar, the government must be responsible to people. The government must be responsible to people. He gave very overwhelming significance to responsible government, even at the cost of unstable government. Because they had experienced the exploitative nature of government, and hence responsibility of government became utmost important. Second, India had experienced to some extent parliamentary democracy since the beginning of 20th century. Hence, it was familiar with parliamentary democracy. Next, the nature of Indian society, which was highly diverse and had huge regional variations. It demanded representation of different sections of society. Next, the disadvantages of presidential form, especially dominance of one leader and centralizing tendency, can be considered other factors. Change in paragraph. Among all the factors, the concept of responsible government was most important, which needs elaboration, that first there would be collective and individual responsibility. There would be collective as well as individual responsibility. In bracket Article 75. Next, the real executive would belong to legislature. Hence, through legislative control, its accountability can be upheld. Next, during elections, since each MP, MLA will have to seek vote in the constituency to get elected, the people will evaluate both government, means both party and individual candidates' performance. Next, the Prime Minister, while deciding portfolios, will take into consideration representativeness of different sections of society. Next, since it is cabinet form of government, there would be collective decision making. And hence there is also chance for course correction. In fact, Lok Sabha can remove Council of Minister headed by Prime Minister. Change in paragraph. That is, the parliamentary form of democracy has multiple layers of responsibility mechanisms. Therefore, it was expected that the parliamentary democracy in India will work effectively better than presidential form of government. let's. So that is how we can say that why we went for this. Right. Now let's write a difference between Indian parliamentary democracy and UK parliamentary democracy. UK parliamentary democracy. Although both have similarities in terms of macro level characteristics. In terms of first dual heads, second collective and individual responsibility, next concept of responsible government, next cabinet form of government, next system of elections, next legislative processes, however still they have following differences. On the one side you can write UK, on the other side India. UK side you can write unwritten constitution. This side written constitution. Next, democracy and constitutional system evolved. Democracy and constitutional systems evolved on UK land. And it has civic culture. This side, both constitution and democracy have been adopted and it has mixed type of political culture. Next, it is a monarchical parliamentary democracy. It is a republic parliamentary democracy. Next, it has parliamentary supremacy. That its parliament can make any law. Except one. It cannot make man woman, woman man. आजकल वो भी पॉसिबल है. पुराना हो गया कोटेशन.
लिखना है हरी.
नहीं वहाँ पे स्टिकर लगाना है. ये सिंबलिक कोटेशन होता है, लिखना जो है चाहिए ताकि एग्जामिनर को भी तो हंसी आना चाहिए ना. घर में झगड़ा करके आया होगा, कॉपी चेक कर रहा है आपका. Anyhow, सो ये सिंबलिक स्टेटमेंट्स होता है, लिखना हो चाहिए, मीन्स वी शुड राइट इट, बिकॉज इफ यू रीड एनी बुक ऑन ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट्री डेमोक्रेसी तो दिस स्टेटमेंट विल बी मेंशन. सो नाम था उस, लेट्स से पर्सन वाज, इनिशियल नेम आई फॉरगेट, बट लोल में, लोल, it is like something he gave this statement. Anyhow, see this is the main difference, so no other तो सारे पॉइंट काउंट करने के लिए है, डिपेंडिंग की लेंथ ऑफ आंसर क्या है, और भी पॉइंट्स है, बट दिस इज मेन पॉइंट, that parliamentary supremacy, let's write in our country. By the way, what we have?
Constitutional supremacy.
Yes. So let's read. India has constitutional supremacy. India has constitutional supremacy. And Parliament is bound by the provisions of the Constitution. Provisions of the Constitution. Next, it has bicameralism. Bicameralism, but House of Lords is a formal house. Is a formal house. This side, Rajya Sabha is not formal. It has been given equal status except in financial matters. Except in financial matters. Next, leader of opposition and shadow cabinet system. Shadow cabinet system, of which leader of opposition is considered alternative prime minister. Alternative prime minister. This leader of opposition is given status of a cabinet rank minister, but not alternative prime minister. But not alternative prime minister. Next, office of a speaker is independent. Office of a speaker is independent. And there is institutionalized practice. Institutionalized practice, this side. It is independent based on convention. It is independent based on convention. Next, its parliamentary system functions on the basis of conventions. Its parliamentary system functions on the basis of convention. This side. Indian parliamentary system functions on the basis of detailed enumerations in the Constitution. Detailed enumerations in the Constitution, in addition to conventions. Change paragraph. Of all the differences, the main difference is supremacy of parliament and lack of clear separation of powers. Lack of clear separation of powers. The state is also unitary in nature. The state is also unitary in nature. Even if India was influenced by British parliamentary democracy, even if India was influenced by British parliamentary democracy, and it had also British legacy in India, it had also British legacy in India, still it did not simply imitate, it did not simply imitate British characteristics of parliamentary democracy. Rather, Indian characteristics also reflect some features of US presidential system. Some features of US presidential system, as well as bringing changes in characteristics suiting to Indian conditions. In case of US practices, India has following similarity, or India, in case of US practices, India incorporated following characteristics like first, written constitution, second, elected head of the state, next, separation of powers, fundamental rights with enforceability, next, independent judiciary with power of judicial review, office of vice president, next, federal characteristics, change paragraph. Therefore, even if Indian parliamentary democracy will be considered close to UK parliamentary democracy, and is more naturally influenced by UK parliamentary system, of Westminster model. However, it does have also reflection of US presidential democracy. So this is what we can say, some basics related to that. Now next is whether Indian parliamentary democracy, let's write next, whether Indian parliamentary democracy reflects presidential characteristics, presidential form of democracy characteristics.
So we just talked that, no?
No. We talked in terms of theory, let's say. Theory in the sense that okay, our parliamentary democracy overwhelmingly it is UK type, this, but it does have some features of US presidential form of democracy, which can be, let's say that okay, not necessarily linked to presidential, but it is also constitutional system how we compare, but parliamentary democracy has a very broad reflection. So in theory we have also some practices of US presidential form of democracy. Now let me make the headline means the topic more specific. So you can write like this: presidentialization of Indian democracy, presidentialization of Indian parliamentary democracy. This or prime ministerialization of Indian parliamentary democracy. Prime ministerialization of Indian parliamentary democracy. So on the basis of working experiences, of Indian parliamentary democracy, it has been found that it has incorporated in practice, or reflected prime ministerialization or presidentialization, that is dominance of one leader, So let's take how dominance of one leader. Yes. So we told here the features of parliamentary presidency. Basically, when these characteristics, when we start finding that these characteristics we have written, right, 1 to 5. So means when we find that these characteristics, suppose I write it as X or Y, and this is X. So when Y start reflecting in X, so it becomes prime ministerialization or presidentialization. How? So we say dual head, but then dual head is only in name. This we say dual head only in name. You know that ki Indira Gandhi time, so she was both, isn't it? Single head and so you should know that emergency was declared and then president was informed. पता है आपको emergency लग गया है कल से. Anyhow, so that is how. And present president is a very humble person. He does not show his presence. So humble. Right. कुछ पता नहीं चलता. Right. So he does not utter anything. Let's say इसके पहले तक तो कभी कभी लोग अटर भी करते थे, लाइक से कि प्रणब मुखर्जी ने 2 बार बोला गवर्नमेंट को विल टॉक एट सर्टेन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम ने बोला, के आर नारायणन ने बोला था. सो Sorry. So when presidents and prime ministers independent, this is how it is, the real executive. So it start with this, we have told party. But party and person become the same. When party is equal to person. The party is equal to prime minister. So you can find time to time party will be equal to prime minister. Basically there are, you can say Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, this, and then you can find now present Modi ji. So this others at times it has happened that they have dominated, but many a time let's say that their time party is nothing but prime minister. So this they have dominated. Plus let's say that party they have become larger than party. आपने देखा था काशी में ओनली वन पर्सन. अरे और लोग भी नहा लेते, उनको भी थोड़ा सा प्यूरिफिकेशन की जरूरत थी. राइट. सो मतलब ओनली वन लीडर, कोई और गवर्नमेंट का उसमें नहीं है. मतलब दैट इज हाउ मौर्य टाइप, इजंट इट? प्योर मौर्य टाइप. Kautilya is taking rest in Delhi. So the question you will find that only one leader is going, matlab prime minister, let's say, no any other person with him. So this kind of, let's say, और लोग भी हो सकता है कि क्या उन लोगों को हिंदू रिलीजन में बिलीव नहीं है. Anyhow, so the question is that party and prime minister larger than life, you'll find that. So it is larger than life image. This happened. Then elections, let's say, when elections have been fought, so even Nehru time also, so elections have been fought. So they have been fought on prime ministerial candidate or their leadership. But elections should be fought on party performance, party, because party system should dominate. The party, rather than party, it is person. If party has a dominant leader, it wins. If party does not have dominant leader, it does not win. And if this situation you will take to the state level, so then it is more clear. Party means person, person means party. Regional level, because there is only one person in that leader. Right. You cannot name the second leader. Samajwadi Party, one leader. BSP, one leader. Right. So you cannot name a second leader in that party. So person and party system, you will find that this Nitish Kumar in Bihar, and you will find that it is called what we can say, Naveen Patnaik in Odisha. Good that he has been there, but then after him who? Maybe his son, we do not know. He may be studying in Harvard University. So the question is that, let's say, there is no second leader if you think about the state, and once party leader dies, party. Right. So AIADMK, party leader dies, party. Also take rest in peace. So this will find. So party system, let's say, so it's person rather than party. So persons have dominated. This you should know. In fact, in COVID time, one person has dominated, either chief minister or prime minister. That's why articles have been written, PM, CM and DM. Only three persons. Where is democracy? Anyhow, so we have to understand this. So in practice we find that it is reflecting. So person, there is no internal party democracy. Internal party democracy. Why there is no internal party democracy? Because the person who has been elected, you cannot question his authority. You cannot question and you cannot resign. See the Congress party. मतलब its leader is let's say he resigned. वो resign भी नहीं करना चाहता है, resign भी कर दिया है. Means मतलब समझ में नहीं आता है कि वो आप इन है कि आउट है. Right. वो गंगा जल वाला डायलॉग याद आता है. Right. उसका कि इन है कि आउट है पता ही नहीं है. So the question is either you resign it clearly. Right. और दे दो वो क्या नाम है किशोर क्या नाम है दैट पॉलिटिकल एनालिस्ट प्रशांत किशोर दे दो प्रेसिडेंसी क्या करना है anyhow so the question is that this it shows that there is no internal party democracy one leader dominates means one leader dominates in party also in election also and when government is formed in decision also so then other people become I say sarcastically that the present government the prime minister is so strong and he keeps deliberately his leaders weak. Sorry to say but sarcastically you take it. The others are kept so deliberately weak that he should remain strong. And so we'll talk also when we'll take secretariat. So that happens. So in actual practice, it is found that one person dominates. In practice, one person is dominating. But we say it is a collective form. It is party system. Collectively it will this. So that's why it has been told that basically whenever there is any charismatic leader, dominant leader, popular leader in parliamentary form of government, it will have reflection of presidential form of government. And when it will have reflection of presidential form of government, it will have also threats of presidential form of government. That's why let's say if you find one dominant article in newspaper for last 7-8 years, so one dominant nature of article in across newspaper, especially in the Hindu and Indian Express, will be related to authoritarian prime minister. Right. This prime minister, concentration of power, centralization of power, emergency क्या declare करना है, it is already let's say in operation. So means you'll find if a dominant nature of article written in such newspapers, it is written on prime minister authority. This so even if it is a parliamentary democracy where it is not having the threat of presidential form of democracy, that is how it is argued, but that will be argued in when we'll take comparison between responsible government and the presidential form of government. Here it is that it has been presidentialized or prime ministerialized. Now you should also know that to some extent no form of democracy can be pure. Means if we have a parliamentary form of democracy, in practice it will have some reflection of presidential form. And similarly, if it is a presidential form of democracy, in practice it will have some practice of parliamentary form in terms of responsible government. That is how we can say. But at the same time, let's say that since there is a dominance of one leader and democracy is not mature, responsibility is not fixed, then it can pose more threat. This parliamentary democracy, dominance of one leader can pose more threat than presidential form of government. Right? Why? Because in presidential form of government, it is easy to evaluate the work of president. In parliamentary form of government, it is difficult to evaluate the work of prime minister because it is party system. Since it is party system, constituency system, in constituency system, let's say that, Baki to, let's say that Kashi to Mathura, that will take care of. So it is very difficult to evaluate the performance of prime minister. This, और बहुत सारे लोग यहाँ पे तो ऐसे बोलते हैं हम पार्टी को नहीं वोट दे रहे हैं, हम तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर को वोट दे रहे हैं, राइट? हम बीजेपी को वोट नहीं दे रहे हैं, हम तो मोदी जी को वोट दे रहे हैं. This, so that way it happens, even if leader is popular, so leader becomes popular if not the party. This, so that way it becomes very difficult to fix the responsibility. Responsibility, that is how the problem, that will talk next point. Let's write in this aspect. Therefore, in actual practice, the working of Indian parliamentary democracy has reflected presidential form of government practices. Like, first, dominance of one leader, especially personality of prime minister. First you are writing dominance of one leader of personality prime in decision making of the government. That if prime minister is charismatic, dominant, he becomes more than equal. Second, in elections he dominates. And elections are won. On the basis of his characteristics, personality characteristics. Next, in party he dominates in decision making. For instance, the three prime ministers, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, and present prime minister, can be considered more presidential type, because they dominated decision making, and hence there have also been threats for disadvantages of presidential system. However, to some extent, it can be said that any democracy, if it has dominant personality, in parliamentary democracy, it is prime minister. There will be dominance of the real head. It cannot be avoided. But it can be kept democratic. Through, first, internal party democracy, internal party democracy. Second, promoting cabinet form of government and collective decision making. Cabinet form of government and collective decision making. Next, making Prime Minister answerable as leader of the government, means leader of the parliament. Leader of the parliament. In the house he belongs. In the house he belongs to. And therefore, even if Prime Minister is dominant, even if Prime Minister is dominant in parliamentary democracy, still there are greater checks and balances. Greater checks and balances vis-a-vis greater checks and balances vis-a-vis presidential form of government. Presidential form of government. So let me tell that even if we say all these things, but still we'll say that the checks and balances in parliamentary democracy are much more than what the checks and balances available in presidential form. Like Prime Minister has to reply in the house he belongs. Even if he does not speak, but yes, still he will be gherao time to time, and at least let's say that he would be forced to speak once in a year. So means this way we can find, right? Means if you have a very lowest expectation, still it can be possible. Similarly, let's see in party also many a time he has to face revolts and other things. There can be also revolts, you know that. And Rajnath Singh resigned when he was not included in cabinet committee members. So it is insider information. Then finally he was also made means member of one cabinet committee. You should know that cabinet committee and appointment only two members are there. One is Prime Minister, another is Home Minister. Basic definition of committee, two or more persons. So, but it is very unheard, let's say that. It does not sound good for a democratic government to have only two persons as appointment members. So that's why we say that these characteristics we find. So that's why many a time you may be knowing, but when we'll teach about democracy, so you will know about the facets of democracy in terms of what is in theory it should be, what is in practice. Then you can make your view more rational about how democracy should be and how it is working. Largely people do not know. Theory तो आजकल कोई पढ़ता नहीं है. Means this is how I can say what is exactly democracy in theory, what is parliamentary democracy in theory. जो practice में है, that is how people are reading now. So this anyhow. So even if there are threats, but still we have checks and balances. Like say in parliament, in party, internal party democracy can also be an aspect. And even if, let's say, there are many other factors also which influence in elections. So this way we can say about this aspect. But now let's take the main question, that is called whether Indian parliamentary democracy has remained responsible, worked responsibly, or there should be adoption of presidential form of government. Presidential form of government. If not, then what should be the reforms to make Indian democracy more responsible and performance oriented. More responsible and performance oriented. By the way, answer is also clear, you know that. So we should not adopt presidential form of democracy. No. So we should not adopt presidential form of democracy. When we will make our presidential, how to make parliamentary democracy work effectively?
The proper checks and balances by making them more accountable. Voting based on their work, not on the party or the candidate. By making parliament function.
Political culture.
Political
Attendance of
At-
MPs.
मतलब स्कूल का रजिस्टर जाना चाहिए
Internal
पार्लियामेंट
party.
में
That also they will manipulate.
रजिस्टर आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस किस लिए है
Proxy. Creation and discuss. Imparting more values in them.
मोर वैल्यूज इन दैट सो जो
That's what lacking in the.
ये सारे वैल्यूज का ऐसे की तैसे राइट
Code of conduct for political leaders. Electoral reforms.
Yes. So let's take that responsible government. Or you are talking about flaws of responsible. कैसे ये इररिस्पॉन्सिबली बिहेव करते हैं। तो कोई भी ले लो, मान लो स्कूल, और स्कूल में मान लो टीचर नहीं है, स्टूडेंट्स हैं, मिड डे मील है, जो भी है, तीनों एक दूसरे को ब्लेम करते हैं। You will have MPs, MLAs, local. Then you have the government. गवर्नमेंट, तीनों एक दूसरे को ब्लेम करते हैं। और वो एक लोकल कहावत है ना कि दो लोग आपस में लड़ रहे हैं, फिर वो बंदर आता है और चपाती लेके चला जाता है। यहाँ तो चपाती भी नहीं है। सो दिस यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड। कितने सालों से बेवकूफ़ बना रहे हैं सिर्फ स्कूल में ना, तो अभी भी बेसिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है। हाउ मेनी ईयर्स यू विल टेक। ठीक है, अभी मान लो फिर गवर्नमेंट हैज रिजुवेनेटेड, एवरी गवर्नमेंट रिजुवेनेट। अगर आप देखोगे ना तो हर गवर्नमेंट, व्हेन देयर वाज ए न्यू इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी, यू नो दैट कि ब्ला ब्ला थिंग्स वर रिटन, राइट, न्यू इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी। सो present government is also rejuvenating, and doing, yes, and every time you have some new things to do. It's not it they have not done it. Computer revolution happened, telecom revolution happened, so many things, IITs were established, so there are so many things. But let's take that कि how they pass it on to each other. और उसका दूसरा तरीका है कि एजुकेशन को कहाँ लेके आ जाओ, कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट में, ताकि किसी का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ना रहे. अब इसका अगर आपको देखना है तो दो तरीके से आप देख सकते हैं. दिल्ली और पोल्यूशन. सो अपने तो ये लोग बाहर रहते हैं, कभी पंजाब चले जाते हैं, कभी शिमला चले जाते हैं. So you can see Delhi pollution, and you can see how they have been passing it on. So you can imagine that when such a serious matter which is affecting the lives of everyone, every person is affected, but still it does not matter. Then you can see oxygen cylinder. शॉर्टेज नहीं था. देयर वाज नो शॉर्टेज. जब कोर्ट ने बोला कि हमें डिटेल परमुटेशन कॉम्बिनेशन बना के दिखाओ, क्या पढ़ के आए हो 10th मैथमेटिक्स, ठीक है. सो कोर्ट आस्क्ड डिटेल. You can imagine, right? If court is like their school children, court is asking, give me detail.
सर मिसमैनेजमेंट हुआ था.
Right. And court is saying that कि दिल्ली को इतना दो, इतना देना है तुमको ऑक्सीजन. मतलब you can imagine that कि अगर आपको हंसना है मतलब, तो you can let's say imagine that कि what laughable things we do. एक तरफ हम बात करते हैं कि हम मार्स पे चले जाएंगे और ये लेके आएंगे, अच्छी बात है. But this is what you will find the responsibility. Who is responsible? Right. Firecrackers. Nobody will act. So how you want to judge whether government is responsible? Don't see GDP growth rate. Don't see that कि a building has been constructed, a road has been constructed. See the problems of the society. And many problems of the society are as old as 1947. They have been overstretched. So when you let's say that you go on overstretching it, it means what you are doing. Any problem you can say that. Let's say defection problem. They will not solve it. Criminalization of politics. अब तो कोर्ट ने बोला है कि अब हम भी नहीं बोले. They told us, no, we will not also tell anything. Right. मतलब they have told, they have given orders like कि एक वेबसाइट होना चाहिए. You should have your political party website. On the political party website, you give details of your candidates, and if you have given ticket to any person criminal background, you mention कि why you have given. This गवर्नमेंट जो है एनजीओ के पीछे पड़ी है, कोर्ट जो है पार्टी के पीछे पड़ा है. Right. The same hisab kitab government is taking from NGOs. Whether we have website, what is your annual turnover, right? What are other major, let's say, funds we are receiving? Give us detail. But political parties, the courts are behind them. So you have to understand all these things, and then hardly it matters. So this is how now let's say that every year it is increasing. Hardly it matters. Like So this you can say that. Similarly, many social problems will find that. Social problems of society. So if you see, let's say that, social problems, farmers problem, whatever you can say. So responsible government you can judge on the basis of not ki how many, what has been done. Yes, certainly let's say society will progress. It has been done, lots of things have been done. But then what other things have not been done and why they have not been done. And there is no any responsibility, rather there is overlapping of relationships. That's why I say that capital assets, so we have not created capital assets. Right. Capital assets, now let's say, yes, 1, 2, this, that we try to create. But most of the capital assets, I told you that they are past historical capital assets. We want to destroy them. We have not created capital assets. And this aspect, why we are not creating this is one aspect. Then urban governance, let's say, urban governance. We'll talk in urban local bodies. Urban governance, urban local bodies, they will exercise control. ये भी चाहता है अपना हिस्सा, ये भी चाहते हैं अपना हिस्सा. This. So जब इलेक्शन आता है तो ये यहाँ पहुँच जाते हैं. तो इनका जो what they have done hardly it matters. That's why I say that कि Virat Kohli will start playing, let's say that in district level match, so necessarily he will win, right? There is no question. He will necessarily win. Let that the match be played in the district team, the district level team, rather than that कि Virat Kohli. But then he reaches here. Why भाई जीतना है election? So this brings overlapping of relationships. If you know about state legislative assembly functioning, so you will आप सर पिट लोगे कि whether legislative assembly functions at all. Do they have committees, estimate committee, public account committee? Why we have created all these things? And we glorify that responsible government. So we'll teach in state government. Their meetings highest number of sitting is 30. मतलब 30 times वो sit करते हैं बस. They sit only 30 times. What they do rest of the time? और सारा ये infrastructure बना के क्या किया है? Wastage of money. This is why I say that कि बच्चे जिस दिन पहुंच जाएंगे तो सब हिसाब किताब मिलना शुरू हो जाएगा. So the question is that let's say it's all, let's say that overshadowed. What they do in legislative assembly, you know that even they don't put their debate and discussions on the websites, and they don't give through RTI information. So legislative assembly and this functioning to some extent pressure है मान लो वार्ड से भी pressure है. प्राइम मिनिस्टर कहीं जाते हैं तो देखते हैं तो थोड़ा सा असर तो पड़ता ही है कि हमारे यहाँ भी डेवलपमेंट होना चाहिए. So let's say union government has exposure to world and then it is concerned about whatever the checks and balances. But if you take in terms of actual responsibility, so that is how we can say that. And you know how elections are held. So how elections are held, so you know already. Now, let's take presidential form. Now, union, state, local. President, governor, mayor. They are all directly elected. Directly elected. No overlapping. So parallel system. Parallel system. Hence, people make him responsible. State level people make him responsible. And national level people make him responsible. अब प्रेसिडेंट का कोई बिजनेस नहीं है मेयर लेवल पे, इसलिए तो उसके पास फ्री टाइम है, जा करके हॉलीडे भी, मतलब he can take holiday. He has no business to do business at local level. The local governments, they manage themselves. They have created a system. Why the government, let's say, why the head of the state should be concerned about local government? So, local mayor, he is responsible. तब सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट नहीं हो रहा है तो क्वेश्चन उससे पूछा जाएगा. यहां तो सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट नहीं हो रहा है तो पहले तो किसी फिल्म स्टार से पूछा जाएगा जो कुछ जानता नहीं है, राइट. फिर उसको किसी गलत आदमी से पूछेगा, राइट. और सही आदमी से तो पूछेगा ही नहीं. मीडिया वाले भी ऐसे ही है, घुमाते हैं, उनको भी पता है भाई, मान लो फिल्म स्टार से पूछेगा तो कवरेज ज्यादा मिलेगा, लोग ज्यादा देखेंगे. मतलब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पे बात होता है और कौन आता है तो रिलीजियस प्रिस्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पे बात करेगा और लीगल एक्सपर्ट जो है वो टेम्पल पे बात करेगा. Anyhow, so this you have to understand. So, mayor is directly responsible for solid waste management, and people will ask to him question. They will ask to him. Whole of the city approach. He is directly elected. If people do not like him, he does not perform, he is replaced. And anyone can come, anyone, you can also come, anyone can stand because it is direct election. It is direct election, so you can see that anyone can come and let's say there no need to have any party background. Similarly, let's say state governor directly elected by state. Now he has parallel system. And now governor has to perform. Governor has to perform. This you should know. And then center has no business in state governor relation. Center has no business to talk about, let's say, any state, Texas है या California है, Los Angeles है, क्या है, president has no business. Then he is also independent and he has autonomy. So when he has independence and autonomy, there will be growth of leadership. He will do something for that city now. So he is a person who wants to do something for that Texas or let's say California. यहाँ तो जो पर्सन आया है उसका कुछ एजेंडा ही नहीं है. मतलब what you wonder ना कि पर्सन इज चीफ मिनिस्टर फॉर 10 years, फिर भी स्टेट का कुछ हुआ नहीं. What he is doing exactly? 10 years में तो रेवोल्यूशन आ जाना चाहिए. But then what he is exactly doing? So this you should know that. And again, let's say that next time. So this is how the person will not again be elected if he does not perform. This यहाँ पे परफॉर्मेंस का कोई मतलब ही नहीं है. योगी जी के ऊपर इलेक्शन होना चाहिए, बट देन प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैज टू ओवरशैडो हिम. योगी जी आप थोड़ा पीछे रहिए, वैसे ही थोड़ा पीछे चलते हैं वो. अब मान लो योगी जी का कोई अगर फ्लॉ भी होगा तो इट इज ओवरशैडोड बाय पर्सनालिटी ऑफ प्राइम मिनिस्टर. वेयर इज द रियल इवैल्यूएशन? एंड इट्स नॉट अबाउट दिस. नाउ बिहार में इलेक्शन होगा, नीतीश जी चले जाएंगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर के साथ. जिसको कल तक क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे थे आज वो उनके हीरो बन गए. दिस वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. नाउ मध्य प्रदेश, शिवराज सिंह चौहान, चलो दूसरे को प्रेसिडेंट चीफ मिनिस्टर का कैंडिडेट लाओ, भूल जाओ उनको. If he has not done anything else, means perform, and people may vote him out, the government may change the leadership. So where people are really, people have no choice also in democracy. So their choices are also, will find that the candidate will find, and hence this is how the evaluation does not happen here of chief minister. The chief minister is not evaluated, local elected members are not evaluated, and forget about national level. This is how we mean by fixing responsibility. That in presidential form of government, responsibility is fixed because there is one single elected head. Since it was expected, the concept, as far as concept is concerned, so parliamentary form of democracy, conceptually it is good that it has layers of responsibility. So we expected that the layers of responsibility will work. The layers of responsibility that we have, so these layers will work. And yes, certainly if layers of responsibility एक जगह फेल होगा तो दूसरा काम करेगा, दूसरा फेल करेगा तो तीसरा काम करेगा, पता चला कोई भी काम नहीं कर रहा है. That is a major flaw, you should know that, of parliamentary form of government. And that's why if there are issues related, so those issues continue. Most of the cities are facing problem of solid waste management. और वो एक दिन से नहीं, पता चला ये लैंडफिल था, ये बंद हो गया है, ये ओवरफ्लो कर रहा है. Basic thing, you have to understand basic management things, no, not big thing we are expecting. The basic thing is that every city is facing solid waste management problem, garbage management problem, drainage management problem, water management problem. How long you will keep facing it? तो लोगों ने तो अब होप ही छोड़ दिया कि पानी साफ मिलेगा, एक्सपेक्ट ही मत करो. साफ पानी पीना है तो बाहर से बॉटल खरीद लो, बिस्लरी तो आ ही रहा है, isn't it? So this, how long? So this is called, let's say that fixing responsibility, and that is how collectively means how you will make the basic needs of the people, basic amenities of the people on day-to-day basis that people face, how you will make it relieved at minimum level of standard. This. So yes, we may have rapid bus transit system, we may have high speed bus system, metro bhi aa gaya hai. Yes, but at the same time we talk uniformity in basic minimum standard of services if you find, and all cities struggle for that. All at the, similarly we have told that all schools struggle for that, and similarly let's say that all hospitals struggle for that. That what we can say that basic minimal facilities. And everyone knows that, since it is being done because responsibility is not fixed, and then many other reforms keep pending, many things keep pending, and we keep bringing what we try to do. Basically, we, instead of taking responsibility, we show our development more in terms of schemes, programs. Yes. So largely we will try to not take responsibility and fix the matter where it is. So we will not fix the matter. What we will do for इसके problem के लिए अब government ने एक scheme लेके यहाँ से इसको यार this. So अब हम क्या focus करते हैं scheme. अब scheme के हम अब इस पे focus ही नहीं करेंगे. हमारा focus यहाँ है effective implementation of scheme. But you know that every city has its own aspect. Every city is different. You cannot have the same strategy for Bengaluru as for Hyderabad, and Hyderabad as for Lucknow, and Lucknow as per Jamshedpur, or Jamshedpur, or let's say that we can say Jaipur. You know already all cities are different. and they have grown with their historical aspect. So when they have grown up with their own historical aspect, don't you think that we need to develop them in that manner? It means कि you have to have developers over there. जो जयपुर का है वो जयपुर के बारे में ज़्यादा जानता है, उस सिटी के, he knows the pulse of the city, he knows that कि all those historical aspect. So whether we are having the persons in that development, and this will not come unless, let's say that you follow this kind of system, like say this, why we create 3-tier structure. The 3-tier structure is created so that union can focus on macro things. Let's like union has to construct national highway, so it can focus on national highway. Union has to go for central universities, so it can construct central universities. So union is supposed to take the big responsibilities, followed by, let's say, states have to take their responsibility at their level, local has to take responsibility at local level. This is how 3-layer structure you have. But when you mix everything and everything is done by union or let's say state, so that becomes a problem, and that is what it has happened, that it was expected that when we have parliamentary democracy, so it will evolve and the layers of responsibility would result into greater, let's say, responsible behavior. But it became other way around, let's say it has become politics, and all those who are expected to work, they have become more in terms of mafias, land, let's say that nexus, corruption, if you go into those problems. But we are not talking those problems. Instead of responsibility, rather it has happened that they have siphoned the wealth for themselves and they have not behaved. Here यहाँ पे चूंकि defection होगा नहीं, governor is elected, defection का होगा ही नहीं, तो he will not bribe any person. Criminalization होगा नहीं, इसलिए कि he has to be elected, तो two things will not happen. There is no defection politics and there is no criminalization. And he will not get elected unless he seeks vote on performance. इसलिए एक कास्ट और एक रिलीजन के बेसिस पे वो जीतेगा नहीं. 50% plus 1 proportional representation. So he has to get elected 50% plus 1. यहाँ तो 20% भी मिल जाए भैया, चलो एक और एक किसी कास्ट, पर्टिकुलर कास्ट का पॉपुलेशन ही इतना है, तो पूरे कई जनरेशन तक उसको कोई जरूरत ही नहीं है परफॉर्म करने का. This you have to understand. These are nitty-gritty details. So then the person has to win, and defection will not happen, criminalization will not happen. So many of the problems that we have inhered in this responsible government concept, they will not be problems in that. The most important problem in that is that it can become authoritarian. But that has not happened. The threats, let's say in US it has not happened. Yes, time to time, let's say one happened. In parliamentary also it has happened. Our democracy has also experienced Indira Gandhi regime and emergency. It can be most authoritarian. How parliamentary democracy can save? So when parliamentary democracy is also prone to that authoritarian regime, and the threats we have, it can become authoritarian, it has not. Now let's take representativeness, whether it has become representative. It has become representative. So you know it better. 8% women represented, and then let's say that if you talk different sections of society, so you know that different sections of society are still marginalized. If you think in terms of representation of society, so still there is marginalization, and that marginalization has resulted into emergence of caste-based politics, parochial subject culture, caste-based political parties, region-based political parties. So on representativeness also you will find that it is failing, and performance, let's say that already we are saying that now bold reforms, they are ready to take any reform. A person has been elected, so he will mean it business for 5 years. But if in, let's say in this, mayor is elected, कभी आपने सुना है किसी दिल्ली का कौन मेयर है? Wherever, have you ever heard him addressing anything, any public meeting? जरूर आपने किसी टेम्पल वगैरह में जाते हुए देखा होगा, या लेट्स से कोई और लेट्स से इनॉग्रेशन करते हुए देखा होगा, लेकिन कभी पब्लिक से इंटरेक्शन के लिए किसी भी इंडिया के किसी भी मेयर को आपने नहीं देखा होगा. So this you have to understand. Then meanwhile what has happened, let's say it has many other things, but I guess you understand by this. Meanwhile what has happened, that new tools emerged, that we start talking that tools 1980s, and we have tools like RTI, Yojana Charter, e-governance, this, and good governance. And we will teach you localism, जिसको बोलते हैं localism, global local debate in urban local bodies. These tools have made both government, they have made them also responsible, and they are also promoting this government also. Responsible. But if you analyze, it has more flaws than this. Because it will give rise to political corruption, nexus, political brickmanship. Everything is money. Right? Money in election, you know that. So election and money both are synonymous. And when election and money, so you know what will happen. Here let's say that since you have to be elected on the basis of performance, there is no question of election money, and if it is open, it is white money. The support is very clear. If there any, let's say, person, financer, any corporate business wala funds a person, political presidential candidate, it is known to everyone. बट हमने उसको अलग अननेसेसरली वो बना के लोगों को पता नहीं होना चाहिए, राइट? लोगों को क्यों नहीं पता होना चाहिए कि कौन कितना पैसा दे रहा है? वही, राइट? लोगों को क्या नहीं पता है, उससे ज्यादा लोगों को पता है, राइट? सो दिस यू मेक लाइक, मतलब एक तरफ आप लोगों को बोलते हैं, ग्लोरीफाई करते हो, इंडियन पीपल आर हाईली स्किल्ड, दूसरे दिन उसको अनस्किल्ड बना दिया. नो, दे शुड नॉट नो. And then you will bring electoral bond, that is a blank check for corruption, and both RBI and Election Commission both were against that, but still we have implemented it. Anyhow, but that's not the point. But we cannot talk, so many problems are there, but just simple I will tell you that since there are lots of rooms for malpractices given in parliamentary democracy, those all rooms have been harnessed to the hilt, to the highest level, and because of that, what we expected that it should be responsible government has turned out to be highly irresponsible government, because you cannot prolong number of issues which should have been solved this or that day, and you cannot say that we do not have resources. This you should know. If a government can have resource to transfer 1,000 crore for self-help groups, you can imagine the resource of the government. Right. When a government is giving 1 lakh crore for one scheme, budgetary support to Manrega, so you can see resource. So resource is not a problem, but the same thing if you remember what Amartya Sen says, functional versus capability. Are we spending the resources on functional aspect or capability? We are focusing more on functional rather than capability. इसीलिए तो एक रोड तो को 3 बार बनाया जाता है, एंड वन ड्रेनेज को भी 3 बार, पहला बार बनाया तो वर्क ही नहीं किया, फिर से पास करवाया गया, ड्रेनेज इज नॉट वर्किंग. This, so that is how you will find that this system, and that let's say that presidential system, that's why Shashi Tharoor has been talking very vociferously. Right. He has been talking it that why we should adopt presidential form, because highlighting that how in this, due to overlapping things, means simply you cannot fix the responsibility of the elected heads or elected governments and MPs and MLAs, and then it gives lots of, let's say that basically almost I will tell you that finally I made one case study on land mafia sectors, although means I have to still read a lot on that because I find it very interesting, and people can go. Someone has written क्या हम parliament जा सकते हैं, people can go, there is no problem. Right. So the question is that you should know that what I was saying, yes, finally I made that case study. So when I will tell you, I cannot tell details of that, but if you read details of land mafia and land grab, real estate, its root person is called politician. Person is called politician, because everything is revolving around that politician. This, it can be CM, it can be MP, it can be minister, whatever you can say that. Right. And it revolves around that. It is not bank, it is not money launderers, it is not real estate. If you remove the politician from that picture, matter ends. Matter ends there. And on politician there is least level of control. There is least level of responsibility. And there is least level of answerability. मतलब जो कम अर्न करता है उसका एक एक कॉइन का अकाउंट लिया जाता है. एक एक, दिस इज हाउ आई से चिल्लर्ड से, जैसे पब्लिक एम्प्लॉय जितने होते हैं उनका एक एक अकाउंट का हिसाब देना होता है, और फरवरी में वैसे भी टैक्स पे करे या ना करे गवर्नमेंट डिडक्ट कर लेती है अपने आप. लेकिन जो ऑन करने वाला है, राइट, मतलब सैलरी तो कुछ नहीं है, वो तो एक बार चाय पिएगा, मान लो स्वेडिश से वो कप आया हुआ है, स्वीडन का होता होगा कुछ, बोलने में क्या जाता है, तो एक टाइम अगर वो चाय पीता है तो आपका वो 90,000, उस 90,000 का ऑडिट हो रहा है, और जो 90,000 करोड़ है उसका कोई ऑडिट नहीं है. अभी तो इट हैज बीन एक्सपोज, ये नोएडा अथॉरिटी हैज बीन, उसको चूना लगाया है रियल एस्टेट वालों ने 50,000 करोड़ का. हमने जो केस स्टडी पूछा है उसमें तो 5,000 करोड़ ही मेंशन है. But news report, according to recent news report, like the real estate business, due to malpractice, the Noida authority has incurred 50,000 crore loss. This. So that is how you should understand responsibility. So the responsibility is that this call when we will make them responsible, and many a time out of irritation, out of frustration, we say that this system should be adopted. Right. but it cannot be adopted since it will be a major shift in Indian, let's say, parliamentary democracy. Hence, what we will expect more is this. Basically, at this level, let me at this level, local. At local level, there should be direct election. This. The government should follow, this is called ARC's second recommendation, principle of subsidiarity. We'll talk at certain point. Means it should transfer powers from this to this to local. And govern focus on 6 core areas. So it should focus on 6 core areas. Plus state level there should be reform, which we'll talk when we'll take state, new union level reform. The major reforms, if you talk, we say simultaneous holding of elections. So that we should bring. Then you have to deal with anti-defection. Criminalization. Parliament must function, that is also. And state level there should be reform. Basically what has happened, reforms they have focused more at union level, local level, state is bypassed. So when we'll teach you 3 chapters, 4 chapters, union government, state government, rural bodies, and urban bodies, then you will get a complete picture of this. How we can bring change. That is how called structural change. That is called structural reforms. So we do not yet have structural reforms. So 1 and 2 reforms we have, that is called GST, that is called IBC. But you can imagine what structural reforms we need. And unless you bring this structural reform, they will keep passing their responsibility. And it can take another 70 years unless you have leaders in continuity like present Prime Minister. The problem is that you don't get the leaders in continuity, and leaders will come, so their priorities also change. This happened. So that's also, it's not that we have not got leader, but एक leader क्या करेगा? What one leader will do in this? ये तो बिल्कुल वो है. What we can say that? It's like what maze, you can say that, कि maze type of thing you can find that, right? Or a cobweb you can find that. So what Prime Minister will do? Right. मतलब it is a situation like कि Prime Minister के बहुत पुराने castle मिल गया है and he is clearing the things, right? He is clearing the things. That is what it is. So job hardly change can happen. So because it's entire system, that's why you have to empower, let's say that, mayors, directly elected heads. So mayors, when you have directly elected heads, so at least at local level, they will be working at local level. A person in Delhi of the particular area, so he will get opportunity to work for the Delhi. A person in Chandigarh, he get opportunity. Largely good people will come. Not only politicians will come, good people will come. Those who have administratorship, those who have administrative leadership, they will come in those, let's say, cities. They will become, let's say, administrator. Rather than you have the system, let's say, that the way politicians come, hardly they have any idea about how to bring development in that city. And imagine if you have 34 cities which are corporation type, so you can have at least 34 mayors. The 34 mayors, if 34 mayors are there, so if 34 mayors are not working, chalo maan lo 14 mayors are working, at least 14 are working. As of now, no mayor is working. This. So that way, let's say that responsibility comes, and that is how we have to talk about. And therefore, means we have to make responsible government. Yes, it has positive sides, which we'll talk when we'll take parliament. How responsible government it has, because we have also, as we have told in political culture about how we are participative political culture, but at the same time, it could have grown to its potential by this time. In 70 years, a country could have grown to its potential, but it has not grown to its potential. It is also because that the governments have not been responsible the way it was expected. Rather, we have prolonged the system, and prolonging of the system has resulted into resource wastage rather than resource efficient utilization of resources. And that has resulted into, let's say that, problems, that procrastinating, so much so that people have now lost their hope. Means people do not have hope. I will tell you, nobody has hope. Everyone is having his own bandobast. Sorry to say that. जो जहाँ है वो अपना खुद बंदोबस्त करता है, पानी का और खाने का और पीने का, रहने का. This is how it is. So because you'll find that basic things are not provided by the state. Why people have more their own, let's say, transportation system? Why there is no public transportation system? You have to learn all these things. You have to see that why public transportation has not been, let's say, flourishing. Rather, it is private transportation. So it is also because of that. So that creates problems. So let's write on this aspect. So what we have written, have we written anything on that?
No, sir.
Although responsible government was adopted so that the government said 3 levels. The governments at 3 levels work responsibly. As there would be layers of responsibility, layers of responsible mechanisms, and checks and balances. Due to such mechanisms, it can be said that to some extent India has experienced responsible government due to deepening and maturing of democracy and inclination towards participative political culture. However, still due to following factors, it is said that the idea of responsible government, due to multi-layer structure of responsibility, gave lots of scope for blame games and passing on responsibility to each other, and in ultimate sense there is headless government and blurring of responsibility. Headless government that results into blurring of responsibility. Blurring of responsibility. Due to which it can be found that first, problems have been procrastinated. Problems have been procrastinated for 70 years. That many problems could have been solved. Many problems could have been solved related to basic amenities, civic services, but they still remain serious problems of society. Next, new problems and challenges have emerged. New problems and challenges have emerged. It can be related to increase in frequency of disasters. Increase in frequency of disasters. Environment ecology related problems. Environment ecology related problems. Demographic challenges. Demographic challenges. Security challenges. Security challenges. Next, the governments themselves have been high level of political corruption. The governments themselves have high level of political corruption. Political corruptions. Change paragraph. The state of affair of responsibility is such that the state of responsibility is such that one can see how in Delhi its pollution and ecological problems have not been addressed. And every year it becomes a serious challenge for all the residents of Delhi. And its solution is being found through court intervention. In fact, more and more court interventions itself means failure of political leadership. Change paragraph. A responsible government was meant for first performance is next development, next social justice. That is realizing the ideals of realizing the ideals of value premises of constitution. Ideals of value premises of constitution. Not for some developments like constructing roads and buildings, hospitals. It was more of social economic transformation of society. More of social economic transformation of society. All other countries, all other major countries have brought more speedy transformation of society. Speedy transformation of society. But in case of India, it has not grown to its potential. It has not grown to its potential. Hence, idea of responsible government is being questioned and debated. The idea of responsible government is being questioned and debated. That should it be continued? Should it be continued? Change paragraph. On the other hand, the fears of presidential democracy have not come out to be true, especially if US is taken as ideal. US is taken ideal. Rather, in presidential democracy, there would not be simply so much scope for political corruption. Like first defection, second criminalization, third caste, region-based politics, Change paragraph. Since there is direct election, it turns out to be performance-based election. Although it has its disadvantages, but in contemporary practices, due to first fixing of responsibility, next less scope for political corruption and malpractices. Next, emergence of new tools for responsible government like RTI, citizen charter, e-governance, good governance, localism, even all democracies are being made deliberative democracies. All democracies are being made deliberative democracy. Means responsible democracy through citizens' participation. And therefore, due to this factor as well, the advantages of parliamentary democracy, are getting overshadowed by performance of presidential democracy. So further we will take tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start parliament.
Amending the law.
Yes.
Can we change the existing system by an amendment form of government?
No. We do not. Parliamentary form of government, parliamentary democracy we have, and it will demand, yes, certainly constitutional amendments, but we don't need to go for presidential form of democracy. Rather, you should know that first two elections and first two so Nehru era times, it had an ideals of democracy. It shows there are some state governments also, they have done well. Southern states, you can say that. So there are governments also, they have done well. So positive, since we were not talking here positives, we will talk also later on, but the question is here we are just trying to expose the weaknesses of responsible government that we tell, are inherent weaknesses of responsible government, because then there are lots of scope for political corruption and we justify it, चाहे वो criminalization of politics है, चाहे वो defection politics है या coalition politics है. So presidential form of democracy is not having such problems. It may have some other problems. That's the different thing. But then ultimately today a government cannot simply work if it is not competent. Because today, let's say that the competency of government is very important. And people will not have trust in democracy if their aspirations are not fulfilled. If people suffer from lots of things, so do you think they will have trust in democracy? Then what they will do of democracy when people suffer from that? So that's why we can say that the performance of presidential democracy today somehow it is making attractive, because you can fix the responsibility. Today a city is being compared with another city, and when our city is being compared with another city, then again it is coming the parliamentary versus presidential. Because our cities are not being developed, or it will be developed, it is left to the center. If center will have a policy smart city, so then there will be smart city development. So it's like a potential, no? You are not allowing the people to grow, their potential you are controlling. But let's say that it is time to finish. Tomorrow we'll take and start our topic from parliament. So let's finish.